How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Yeah. I chucked myself off those stairs. I go get a taco.
Trick attempt is no good.
So let's talk about this professional skateboard league, or as Mike Mo loves to call it,
Pumpkin Spice Latte.
Now, as mentioned previously over the past few weeks, this event aims to serve as a new skateboarding contest format, and you see, Mike Mo and his companions felt that skateboarding was getting into a bit of a stagnant area, and they felt a contest of such caliber is what was needed in the industry. Now, although I would be inclined to agree with such a statement, if you're familiar with my channel, I am possessed by skateboarding autism and follow all contest-based events. And with this, I would say that rather than instilling a new sense of originality into the skate formula, like events such as Kaso in Japan, this one, in my opinion, seeks to fill a void that has now been fairly absent by the annual Battle at the Barracks. Due to the Barracks' unfortunate but timely end, there was a void left in the industry that I just knew somebody would attempt to fill eventually, and despite other events like King of Macba, it was clear that more people were drawn to the overall legacy and appeal of the Barracks rather than the games of skate themselves. So what is this professional skateboard league? Well, as Mike Mo likes to describe it, this formula is an approach to a yes or no system in which it wouldn't require audiences to have an extensive prior knowledge of skateboarding mechanics, and that there is no judges to impose a subjective scoring that is left to bias or critique. Now, although this approach is great in concept, we'll see how well it actually worked in the event that took place. As for how this PSL event works, unlike a real game of skate, there is actually a point system in place in which after you or your teammate set a trick on offense, the other two defensive skaters will attempt that same trick with only one of them needing to land it, in which the next set trick will be performed by the other teammate. If the defensive team fails, you get a point, but if they succeed, you don't get a point and have to set another trick. Now, this is where all the similarities to a traditional game of skate end. As with the offensive possessions, things get a little confusing. The team on offense gets an astounding 3 tries total to set a trick before switching to the other team, and each round is concluded after both teams have used up each of their 3 bails. The whole match will only end after 5 rounds have been completed, meaning along with whatever tricks are landed, there's a total of 30 bail tricks that need to happen for the entire match to be done. Yes, you heard that right. For 5 rounds to conclude, there needs to be 15 failed attempts for both teams minimum before the event is over. Assuming that one bail even takes like 20 seconds of stream time, that means there was a mandatory 10 minutes of people just straight up falling for each of the 3 matches, making the 2-hour stream have about 30 minutes or 25% of its runtime be not only failed attempts, but mandatory as part of the format, with the ability of each skater only adding to the length of runtime depending on how many tricks were defended by each team. There is a sudden death clause, and although we didn't see it in action, I'm fairly certain it would just involve another coin toss, in which, like the start of the game, the winner would choose to set or defend a trick, but with only one skater from each team allowed to participate. Now, one thing I want to mention before I forget it is the coin toss itself. You know, as much as it makes sense to have a coin toss in a game kind of scenario to choose who's going to go first, it seems kind of pointless in a game of skate as nobody would ever deliberately put themselves on the defending team right away, especially when you're playing a game for points in which the other team not landing their tricks means you get a point. I'm just trying to make sense of it, but it doesn't seem like having the option for a coin toss really does much other than guarantee whoever wins gets to be in defense. So I think you should just make the coin toss for who's going to be on offense and defense rather than giving them an option for the choice because we know everybody's going to just choose offense. Now, starting with our first match, we had the infamous rapper-actor duo Deshaun Jordan and Paul Rodriguez.
Isn't that long?
Yeah.
Wow.
Versus the 2023 Skater of the Year and Silent Assassin Miles Silvas and Art Cordova.
And yeah, we just met today. We got put on the same team, so.
The first match had a total runtime of 42 minutes and was the longest of the 2 later matches by 10 minutes each. However, that can mainly be attributed to the fact that this was by far the most evenly skilled match of the 3, which can be seen both in the live and final scoring, as the gap between each team never alluded to an entire shutout, and despite Miles' team reaching a 4-point gap by the 3rd round, and as the game goes on, the same tricks can't be repeated, the more obscure and challenging tricks slowly make their appearance, closing the gap between them as the match progresses. This match concluded with the win for the Sodi and Silent Assassin team with a score of 8-7, meaning the total number of bail tricks ended up being not just the 30 mandatory bails, but 2 additional bails for each point, leaving a grand whopping total of 60 minimum failed trick attempts, not including any of the single failed attempts when the team on defense has to match the trick and the first skater that goes bails. The second match, albeit shorter, was hardly any more enjoyable once things got going. Unfortunately, Chris Johnson was injured and unable to show up to the event, leaving two-time SOTY Jamie Foy to take his place with Luis Mora's underground prodigy Roman Hager.
He was a lot younger and a lot smaller.
Both of which were up against Team Disorder, composed of the sexiest skater alive, Nigel Houston, and his government-appointed twink, Zach Sarancino.
Obviously, this guy is a Stairmaster, so...
Now, this first match was by far the most interesting of the three, mainly due to the fact that both Foy and Nigel are considered rail-chomping monsters, and not many people are familiar with Zach and Roman's abilities if you're not, in the skateboard culture. However, it was fairly clear by the first few turnovers who was more skilled in this regard, as Nigel and Zach both ended up taking the win from Foy and Roman. And I feel this match just demonstrates the format at its best, at least, considering that despite Nigel holding the lead from the start of the entire match, Foy and Roman were at least able to make up for half their score in the entire last two rounds, which I guess somewhat proves there's some ability to bounce back from a large lead. And if Roman was successful in landing his pop shove it down the 8 set, I'm fairly certain he would be able to at least get a point from Nigel and Zach, as I don't see them being able to defend that kind of trick, leaving Jamie Foy and Roman's team to actually be tied with them and probably having the sudden death clause put into effect. But I don't think they realized that they could just do tricks that Nigel and Zach definitely have no chance of doing till probably about halfway through the match. But, as we moved on to the finals, we had both winning teams going head to head. And by this point, this would end up being the shortest match of all three.
Team Miles versus Team Nigel. This might take a while.
With the Jaw and Mr. Sarancino absolutely destroying their competitors Miles and Cordova, ending the match with a score of 10-5, which is the largest gap of all three matches entirely. Now, I feel this can mainly be attributed to the fact that both Miles and Cordova had finished their match at a minimum of, an hour and a half prior to the finals, and considering Nigel's approach to contest skating and Zach possibly having a similar mindset, I feel there was a difference in physical levels of performance, and, probably stamina levels as well, making this match just seem like an entire wash for Miles and Cordova, of which they were just desperately trying to defend the onslaught of tricks and land anything they could for their own sets. Now, it seems the total number of points each team can really earn is purely in relation to how many times the other team fails defending a trick and how many times your own team fails setting a trick, especially since you have those 3 bails before the other team even gets a shot to set a defensive trick. In theory, this makes sense. However, in practice, it can lead to a very, very, very boring start. As factoring in that the event takes place at Pierrod's Indoor Park on a 4-flat-4 set, the initial trick attempts for all 3 matches were very subdued and played safe in order to not turn over the set to the other team right away, meaning we had to watch the same familiar and otherwise basic tricks be thrown down for every single one of the matches. This is where I feel the Barracks found its niche and even progressed its own subset of skating. As with flat ground tricks, people would attempt absolutely absurd combinations of which some may have even been MBDs. Rather than just a typical game of skate with friends, the Battle at the Barracks developed a progressive lane of skating where people just focused on tricks that were nearly impossible to replicate first try, if not spending their entire skate career focusing on these types of tricks themselves. This is just one of the many things I feel is absent in the Pumpkin Spice League, and it takes away from the charm that was established by the Barracks. In fact, you could actually look up on YouTube yourself. Battle at the Barracks did an entire game of skate downstairs in Gaps with Ryan DeCenzo and Caleb Alderossi, in which it was 10 times more engaging in both to follow and watch. It also took way less time. Now, I'm not going to go off the rails and just start crucifying Mike Mo from the jump, as he himself said this event is in its infancy and will probably need a lot of adjusting over the time, and I'll give him some benefit of the doubt, as when you even look back at the first SLS event, for example, despite the large crowd, flashy production, and Rob Dyrdek's endless bank account, other than the aesthetic of the course itself, the contest format is entirely unrecognizable from what we know SLS to be today, with its 45-second runs and 5 single tricks. This leads me into what I feel could be some very helpful changes and suggestions, as I feel the event definitely at least has some fair potential. First off, one thing me and plenty of other people agree on is the fact that the lack of trick names being displayed made it kind of annoying, making it sometimes confusing for what tricks have or haven't been done, as by the third match we've seen kickflips done in every stance at least 6 times apiece, with 1 being set, 1 being defended, and 3 matches repeating those exact same tricks. This could go for heel flips, tray flips, whatever. You eventually see it all. The overall production of the show, however, was fairly impressive considering how much behind the scenes work Mike Mo had done to code everything. He has a video on his page himself. It's actually a decent watch. He's pretty honest and open about it. But I think the rounds themselves were hard to follow, and as much as one round would take 10 minutes to get through, the preceding one could be over in a couple minutes if both teams keep failing, leaving the round system to be kind of very sporadic for both audience and skaters themselves, as most of the time the skaters didn't even realize the match was over by the time the final round was finished. This was only made more apparent by the turnover system as well, since each team had 3 bails before the other team even got a chance to set a trick, and you could see the consequence of that in which every single winning team had established their lead within the first round and were never overtaken the whole match. I think an adjustment to the point system that allows the defending team to rebuttal a score could be more engaging. Something like a 2-point system where every trick set is worth 2 initial points, and the defending team has a chance to block those points by landing the set trick. This gives an option for both defending skaters to negate the other team's points if they both succeed, or risk the other team getting 1 or 2 points if one or both skaters miss the trick. This would at least guarantee that each team doesn't have skaters that are completely avoiding tricks they can't do, as there would actually be an incentive to hinder the other team's score if you both landed the set trick. Now overall, Mike Mo was pretty clear from the start of this whole project that it was basically going to be a game of skate downstairs.
The answer's been in front of their face the whole time. It's just basically a game of skate,
Yeah.
with a spin on it.
However, I don't know if the reduction of obstacles necessarily promotes anything challenging or creative. And people like Gifted Hater himself had a great suggestion of even rotating obstacles around things like flat bars, ledges, handrails, hubas, and all that stuff with the stairs, which I feel could prove to be entertaining, as maybe you could provide the skaters with an option to hit one of the 3 obstacles, but you can't repeat an obstacle that was done on the previous set. This would not only add to the variety of trick selection, but also level the playing field amongst skaters whom only specialize in stairs or a select bag of tricks. Along with the fact that I can't really see this contest format boasting such a large range of skaters the same way something like SLS or X Games can, Now let's make one thing clear. Did I enjoy the event? Yes. Do I think there's room for improvement? 1,000%. Now, although most people's first reactions are either going to be super hyped or super bummed when, a new contest series enters skateboarding, regardless what it is, I wanted to approach this with an open mind and take everything that Mike Mo had said into consideration. I mean, he invested his own money into putting all this together, went through the effort to design and code all the production efforts we had seen on screen, and with the help of P-Rod was able to at least host this event in a controlled manner that didn't seem too overproduced or structured. When compared to something early like Street League or X Games, with an onslaught of advertisements, paid sponsorships, and logos plastered everywhere, I feel this event was at least more considerate of the skateboard culture as a whole rather than an excuse to pull in third-party investors from the jump and slap everyone into marketing hell. That being said, another point that just crossed my mind was the whole team aspect to the matches. Not only do they have these skaters rocking these middle school dodgeball league-ass shirts, they have the audacity to base the team names off which skater has the most IG followers. Which, if you're going to have colored jerseys to identify each team, why wouldn't you just call the team by the colored jersey they wear? Even if you put some, dumb creative spin on it, like the Legends of the Hidden Temple does, and call them, the Green Grinders or the Blue Bailers. I just find it so disrespectful to be on a team with your fellow skater, and the team is just their name. That's like if soccer said screw the countries and just said it's Team Messi versus Team Ronaldo. Get over it. There's gotta be a better way to classify these teams other than by who's the most famous. Not that I find the team structure unappealing at all, as that was one of the few things I felt worked very well for the format. With making each team member swap sets on the trick, it made sure that no team was ever relying on only one skater to perform, and giving the team on defense the ability to give their fellow skater their turn if they just feel less confident on a trick, it's at least a decent way to level out the playing field. However, that advantage is only limited to preventing the other team from scoring, as you can't really utilize the same idea for the team who's setting the tricks on offense, and making it really only serve a purpose if and when a skater undeniably came close to landing the set trick and their teammate just wanted to, give them the spotlight. One thing I want to end with is the endings of the matches themselves. As with most traditional skate contest formats, you have a sense of finality and conclusion with high tension moments where the entire placing can swap up in the last second. You know, with SLS matches being ultimately decided by whether or not the top skater in first will be bumped off in the last trick, or any of the X Games Park and Vert events where it's purely decided by who had the best run out of 3 tries. However, the problem with PSL is that it's just essentially a bail party. You get points if the other team bails a set trick. You only get to set a trick if the other team bails enough times. The round only progresses once both teams have bailed 3 times each, and the whole event is over once each team has bailed 3 times for all 5 rounds. As much as the point of the game is the points, it became more of a challenge based around being consistent on defense rather than to be creative on offense. Compared to something like Battle at the Barracks where skaters would jump out the gate with their most difficult tricks, in PSL it feels like both teams were playing it equally safe as to both not waste bails and cause a turnover and not bail tricks that give the other team a chance for points. Not to mention the fact that if this is supposed to be a game of yes or no, the fact that the referee exists at all is kind of redundant because there's the yes and no. It should either be a land or not. It's just one of those things. You know, if there's one thing I could say about this pumpkin spice latte, it's that it definitely needs a lot more spice and a latte improvement.
And with that,
The Professional Skateboard League
season comes to an end. Good night.